But see, burnout is a gradual process that occurs over an extended period of time. You don't just burn out in a moment of time. I mean, you know, you're not going to just babysit somebody's child and then burn out in 2 hours. I mean, no matter how hyperactive the child is, you're not going to burn out in 2 hours. But now if you got to deal with that all day, every day, you could perhaps burn out. But burnout is a gradual process that occurs over an extended period of time. It doesn't happen overnight, but it can creep up on you if you're not paying attention to the warning signs. See, every physical condition, it has warning signs generally to let us know that there's something that's wrong here that you need to monitor, that you need to take notice of here. The signs and the symptom of burnout, they are very subtle at first, but then they get worse and worse as time goes on. You just think of the earliest symptoms of burnout as a warning sign or a red flag that something is wrong and needs to be addressed. Always look for the warning signs of something that needs to be addressed. If you ignore them, you will eventually burn out. And here's the deal, is that the negative effects of burnout spill over into every area of life, including your home and social life. You can't just get burned out at work and then think that it won't affect you at home. When you get burned out, no matter what it is, whether it's ministry, whether it is business related, whether it's in volunteerism, if you get burned out, it will spill over into every area of your life, including your home and your social life. There's sometimes people have seen that in a person where they've just been overwhelmed with responsibility, and then all of a sudden they shut down, and then they want to blame it on going through the change. No, you may be going through burnout. But because of its many consequences, it's important to deal with burnout right away. Once you find it, once you sense that you've got some of these symptoms, it's important to deal with it right away. So when you're trying to deal with burnout, you have to recognize. You have to recognize. To recognize simply is to watch out for the warning signs of burnout. Watch out for the warning signs. Recognize them. It's almost like with a stroke. You know, there are certain things that they'll tell you to check. You know, and you know, you can measure certain things. You ought to be able to recognize the symptoms of it. There are certain symptoms of a heart attack. There are certain symptoms of a stroke. There are certain symptoms when something is going wrong in your body. You know, the eyes are the window of the soul. Doctors can look in your eyes and tell when your body is healthy. It's amazing. Recognize, but you have to recognize. If you don't recognize that there's a problem, you've got a real problem. And then you have to reverse. When you're dealing with burnout, you have to figure out, how do I reverse this? How do I undo the damage of stress and seek support? How do I do that? How do I do that? You have to reverse the effects of it, because if you keep on in that same direction, it'll just get worse and worse. And then here's the third R that I want you to think about, is resilience. Resilience. How do you build your resilience to stress? By taking care of your physical and emotional health. You have to develop a resilience. Now listen, here's what will happen. You have to do what I call raise your tolerance level for stress or pain. If you've got a dream that you're trying to make become a reality, if you've got something that God has given you by vision, and whoever is, am I talking to anybody who has a vision on the inside of them, who has a dream on the inside of them, who has a passion of something that you're trying to work on, and it has not come into manifestation yet? There's a promise that God gave you, and you've not seen the fulfillment of it yet. Now what happens is that when you're working on a promise, the fulfilling of a promise, when you're working on being able to walk in destiny and being able to live your dream and possess the vision that God has placed in your heart, when it comes to the realization of that vision, your life will come under pain and stress. You'll come under an uncomfortable situation trying to make good things happen. You have to get uncomfortable. Birthing is uncomfortable. You have to get uncomfortable. So here's what you have to do if you're going to deal with it. You either have to say, I'm going to shrink the size of my vision. I'm going to reduce the size of my dream. I'm going to lower my expectations to the degree that my stress is now manageable. So I'll lower my aspiration to the level of pain that I'm willing to tolerate in order to get it. You have to reduce your dream or your vision to the level of pain that you're willing to tolerate. Now, if you're not willing to compromise on your dream or your vision, your destiny, if you're not willing, and I hope you're not willing to compromise it. I hope that you don't let anybody talk you out of it saying, well, now, maybe what you're trying to do is a little bit much for you. Maybe you're trying to bite off more than you can chew. These are some mighty lofty aspirations that you have here. And in my years of experience and based on statistical data. But you're not interested in that, because when God sets something in your heart, He is not going to deal with statisticians. He's not going to take a survey to see how other people your same age and race and gender have coped with something. God has uniquely given you the gifts, the determination of mind and spirit to be able to handle it, to be able to adjust to whatever it is. So if you want to wimp out and compromise and reduce the size of your dream and your vision, lower your aspirations and expectations of yourself. If you want to lower that to the level of pain or stress that you are willing to tolerate, that's your business. But the other way to deal with it is to increase your tolerance of the pain. To say, I realize that this goes with the territory. That if I'm going to have my own business, I have to deal with the pain of not being able to have as much free time as I had in the past. I'm going to have to work my tongue out. I'm going to have to sacrifice. I'm going to have to pay now so I can play later. And you got to be willing to roll up your sleeves, count the cost, and say, I am willing to pay the price in order to have this. It can be destructive and counterproductive to a marriage when you so desperately want to get married, but you don't want to pay the price of being a husband or the price of being a wife. That comes with a price tag, and some people are choosing an estate that they cannot afford. You got to be willing to pay the price. Pay the price. How are you going to value somebody and treat them like a queen or treat them like a king, but you want them on discount? You got to be willing to pay the price. If you want the quality, you got to be willing to pay the price. If I don't want something that's going to tap in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, pay the price. Pay the price. Pay the price. You've got to be willing to pay the price. You've got to be willing to tolerate the pain of sometimes not being thanked and appreciated for what you do. You've got to be willing to tolerate the pain of sometimes being taken for granted and all of your efforts not being recognized. That there's a pain that is associated with it, and so you have to increase your tolerance for pain. You have to increase your tolerance for pain, and you can literally increase your tolerance for pain. You can increase, you can raise what's called the threshold of your pain. You have to be able to raise the threshold of your pain. Now, in order to raise the threshold of your pain, you've got to figure out in your life, what do I need to add to myself in order to raise the threshold of my pain? It's not going to raise up on its own. You got to add something. You know, there's a new truth that has to come into your life, a new strategy. There's something that you have to add in order to be able to deal with increased stress, pain, or discomfort in your life. You got to add something to it. I told you that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius. But you can raise the threshold of the freezing point by adding salt to it. And when you add salt to water, water will no longer freeze at 32. I have just raised the threshold of the freezing point. Jesus said, ye are the salt of the earth. So he's telling you the stuff is in you. already to keep from freezing over and waxing cold in your emotions when things don't go right. Are you listening? That you've got the stuff in you so that you don't freeze when everybody else freezes. Water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, not 211. At 211 it only simmers. But at 212, there's a rumbling that comes to the water. The water starts moving at 212. But if you add salt to it, it's got to get hotter than 212 in order to boil. Water will not boil at 212 when you put salt in it. So you are the salt of the earth again. It's what you have in you. It's what you add to you that raises the threshold of the boiling point. Salt raises the threshold of the boiling point. It also raises the threshold of the freezing point. Why do you think when you have ice on the streets that they can put salt on it and it'll melt? It's just salt. It's still frozen, but if you don't put any salt on it, it'll be there for a while. But the salt, it lowers, it raises the threshold of the freezing point. It raises the threshold of the freezing point. So whenever you're trying to do something in your life and the pain is becoming unbearable, it means that there's something that you got to add to yourself. If you don't have enough knowledge in you, you're going to get frustrated out of your wits. If you don't have enough wisdom, if you don't have enough patience, there's something that you need to add to yourself that raises the threshold of your tolerance for pain and discomfort. And if you don't get that sometimes and add it to yourself, you'll burn out. Am I helping anybody? Now let me give you the difference here between stress and burnout, because they're not the same. Burnout may be the result of unrelenting stress, but it isn't the same as too much stress. Stress, by and large, involves too much. Say too much. It involves just too much. Too many pressures that demand too much of you physically and psychologically. Stress is just where it just feels like it's just too much. Stressed people can still imagine, though, that if they can get everything under control, that they'll feel better. So there's a difference between stress and burnout. But burnout, on the other hand, is about not enough. It's about not enough. Being burned out means feeling empty. You feel empty when you're burned out. It means a feeling devoid of motivation. When you're burned out, you are devoid of motivation. It means feeling beyond caring. You just get to a point you just don't even care, and then let them take the children. You just don't care. Just let them get them. They can get this house. They can get the house, the car. They can pick with the dog. They can go and they can take my husband. I mean, they just get to a point. They just don't care. They just don't care. They just don't care. Just feeling empty, devoid of motivation, just beyond caring, just feeling beyond caring. And people experiencing burnout often don't see any hope of positive change in their situation. They don't see any hope. That's why Elijah was saying, "Take me, Lord," because he didn't see any positive change. He's like, everything is going wrong. They've forsaken your covenant. They've torn down the altars. It's like, Lord, what in the world is the world coming to? What's happened to these people? Jesus, if something doesn't happen soon, God, here they were way back in his time. He's saying, my God, these people, I've never seen such godless people before. What is the world coming to? He lost hope. And if excessive stress is like drowning in responsibility, burnout is like being all dried up. See, stress is like feeling like you're drowning in it, but when you experience burnout, it's feeling like I'm all dried up. Your spirit is dried up. Now, one other difference between stress and burnout is that while you're usually aware of being under a lot of stress, you don't always notice when burnout happens. You don't always notice burnout when it happens. It can be very subtle. And I want to give you some of the differences here between stress and burnout so you'll understand it. Because we all deal with stress on some level, but you don't have to deal with the burnout. Stress is about over-engagement. Burnout is about disengagement. Stress is you're over-engaged. You've got too much on your plate. Burnout is about disengagement. You've been burned out because you've carried excessive stress over a prolonged period of time, too long. Stress is about urgency and hyperactivity. Burnout is about hopelessness and helplessness. Very interesting. Stress is about a loss of energy. Burnout is about a loss of motivation. And you know, when you can still have motivation to do some things, but then not have the energy to do it right at that moment. It's a different thing to say, you know, Mama just doesn't feel like it right now. Or Daddy's tired, let Daddy rest a little bit. There's a difference between a loss of energy and then a loss of motivation. Burnout is a loss of motivation. Stress is about an anxiety disorder. You can have panic attacks. But burnout is about detachment and depression. You have to be very careful about burnout with depression. Depression is oftentimes anger turned inward. You'd be very surprised that a lot of depressed people are angry over certain things. They're angry and they turn it on the inside. They repress it and they become depressed. But burnout is about detachment and depression. Stress is about its primary damage is physical. But in burnout, the primary damage is emotional. With stress may kill you prematurely. But burnout will give you a life that's not worth living. And there's nothing worse than dying while you're still alive. And that's what burnout is. It's the death of your soul. It's the death of your spirit, your motivation, your drive, your hope, your ambition. And I just want you to know that there are certain lifestyles that can cause burnout. I want to share some with you, just so that you can be aware. Working too much, without enough time for relaxation and socializing. Being expected to be too many things to too many people. It's a lifestyle burnout, you know. Taking on too many responsibilities without enough help from other folks. Here's a doozy, not getting enough sleep. You can experience burnout just because you're not getting enough sleep. You can have burnout because of a lack of close, supportive relationships. Because you feel like you're in this thing all by yourself. Then here's some work-related causes of burnout. Feeling like you have little or no control over your work. Or a lack of recognition or rewards for good work. Or you're unclear or overly demanding, you got overly demanding job expectations. Or doing work that is monotonous or unchallenging, or even working in a chaotic or high pressure environment. And did you know that even some personalities can be more geared toward contributing to burnout than others? Like a perfectionist. When you have perfectionist tendencies, with the perfectionist, nothing is ever good enough. Nothing is ever good enough. Just trying to get it right, and it's about to drive them crazy because they got to get it right. Perfectionist tendencies. Those folks are more prone to have burnout. Pessimistic view of yourself and the world. It'll give you a burnout. There's some people, we'll never make it. I know we won't. Just pessimistic view. Touch your neighbor and say, I know this person. Some people just give up, you know, before the game is over. You know, I'm like, get away from me, get away. Some folks have the kind of personality where they have the need to be in control all the time, just controllers. They're more prone to have burnout. Reluctance to delegate to others. And then another one is the high achieving type A personality that's very driven, very driven. And that personality can experience burnout much faster than a melancholy kind of a personality. Now, if you're really going to soothe the burn out of burnout, you know, like when you've been in the sun, let me just tell you, burnout is like sunbathing. Now, you might wonder, what in the world do I know about sunbathing? I will tell you. My wife is of the lighter hue. And when we got married, we went down to Mexico to Acapulco and celebrated our honeymoon. And so my wife was out there just laying out there tanning. And she's put on sunscreen and, you know, different kind of tanning stuff. And she looked at me and said, "Aren't you going to put anything on?" I said, "Baby, mine is built in." I had never used sunscreen or any kind of UV protection in my life. As much as I spent time outside, you know, playing and doing it, I had never ever done it. And you know, we had beach property and all of this kind of stuff. I spent a good deal of time at the beach, out in the sun, and I had never used it. And but my wife laid out there so long, and I'm, you know, this is my bride. I'm trying to hang with her. And the funny thing about the burnout that I got from the sunburn, I didn't realize that the damage had been done until the damage was done. I learned a lesson. Had somebody told me that somebody my complexion could sunburn, I would have, you know, I would have told her what I told him. I said, "Baby, mine is built in." I said, "You see that? That's melanin. Mine is built in." And I burned, my thighs burned, my shoulders burned and peeled. And you know, it says you don't want anything to touch you, to touch it. It's just, and I didn't even realize that the damage was done until the damage was done. And the same kind of thing happens with burnout. You're so busy just lying out there, you don't feel what it's doing because it looks like it's not doing anything, but you're under the heat. Does that mean, does it ring any bell? You ever feel like you've been under the heat lamp and you're drying out, your skin is burning and you don't even realize it. You think you're having a good time. And I didn't realize it until we're just walking like old cripples, you know. After that, I was just in a mess. I didn't even understand what was happening. I was like, how could this be? But here's what I want to just give you just a few strategies here to tell you when you're dealing with burnout, if you're facing burnout, what do you do? And I want to tell you to find a place to lay down. Find a place to lay down. This is what Elijah did. I want you, when he came out here in verse 4 and he prayed and asked to die, verse 5 said, "Then as he lay and slept under a broom tree," he went and found a juniper tree, a broom tree, and lay down and went to sleep under that. He found a place to lay down. Now there's a wonderful thing about the 23rd Psalm where it talks about he leads me beside the still waters and he restores my soul. He leads me in green pastures. It talks about how he makes the sheep lay down. Lay down. And a sheep has to be made to lie down. They won't lie down when they are anxious. If they feel threatened, they will not lie down. You can't. They have to be made to lie down. There are times we are the sheep of the Lord. We are his sheep, and there are times that we are just like the natural animal of the sheep. Whenever our lives come under stress, the sheep will get very antsy and they will start pacing back and forth. They will not lie down, but the good shepherd, the Lord who is my shepherd, he makes me lie down in green pastures. If they ever feel threatened, if they are anxious about something, they are worried about their children, they're worried about how they're going to pay this and whether this is going to be repossessed and whether they're going to be able to keep the house or the car or the business, and they're afraid, they've got these things, and they are up. Have you ever had stuff on your mind and you're sitting in a restful chair but restless? Or you're in the bed trying to rest, but your mind is going 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's just going with different stuff coming to you, and you're lying there awake and you cannot rest. The good shepherd makes the sheep to lie down. You have to find the place where you can lie down. You have to say, what is my green pasture? You have to find your green pasture. Different people, it's not the same place for everybody. There are different things that allow people to be able to rest. For a person who's stressed out, one person might go into a room and put headphones on and start grooving with their music. And that's their whole idea. That's the place where they lie down. Another person might get their place of where they lie down out shooting basketball on a basketball court. Somebody else working out in the gym. Somebody else taking a walk. Somebody else in the backyard gardening. There are different ways. Somebody else, it might be running a nice hot tub of water and putting some bubbly stuff in it. And getting in the bathtub and just sitting there. Another person, it might be just standing under the shower, just for an extended period of time, and as the water becomes a type of things just washing over them and calming them down. There, you have to find out, what is my green pasture? Where's the place that I need to find to lie down? Because when you are anxious, worried, and stressed, you don't think clearly. And problems are magnified to you. So your perspective is distorted, because all of that anxiety and that worry keeps your mind in gear all of the time, and you seem to burn out in your mind. And you're wondering, what's wrong with me? And you're tired. And when you get tired, you cannot see solutions that are right in your face. The only thing that you can do right when you're tired is to rest. And that's why you have to find the place that is your green pastures. How do I relax? How do I unwind? See, there are people who will resort to Valium and you guys know, I don't know, Prozac and all kind of stuff to bring them down. And this is a form of self-medicating, to try to treat something that is really a spiritual nature, that God wanted us to come to Him and find the peace that the Holy Spirit Himself can give you. The alcoholic does not drink because he's thirsty. He drinks because he's empty. And he is searching for a spiritual solution. Why do you think that we call alcohol spirits?
Thank you for watching Power for Living.